Hey everybody, Who's Your Jedi here with another review for you. This time I'm talking episode 9 of season 3 of Arrow called The Climb. This is our mid-season finale and boy, we get some really good stuff. It's in my mind not quite the cliffhanger that Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. was, surprisingly, but wow, what a ride, huh? Okay, so let's just kind of get right into things and start talking about what's going on with the characters. And let's start off with Laurel here. And Laurel's kind of been out of the spotlight a little bit lately, and I'm glad that they're bringing her back in because we know that some really big stuff is going to go down with her this season. And also, this episode kind of gives us the chance to see her interacting with Thea, which is not something we've really seen a huge amount of. And this also kind of opens the door to Thea learning about Sarah's death. And one thing I have to give Laurel credit for is that after she tells Thea what happened to Sarah, she immediately says to her, "Don't tell Oliver," which is a good bit of covering to make sure that Thea doesn't catch on to Oliver's secret identity. So, nice job there, Laurel. We also got to see her break the news about Sarah to her mother, and gosh, give Alex Kingston credit. She really brought the crazy with Sarah's mom there. Just her freaking out intensity. I don't know. It's still just a little bit weird for me to look at Alex Kingston with that haircut. I keep expecting her to have that Frizzy River song haircut. So her going, track them down, make them suffer, which, I mean, it's perfectly understandable, but yikes, that's got to be scary to hear coming from your own mother. But Laurel is very much in a place where she's really driven by anger at this point. So I have a feeling that once she does become Black Canary and officially go out there and start kicking some butt, that Oliver's might have to keep her from kind of going down the Huntress route. Let's put it this way. And then there's the fact that, oh yeah, Thea technically killed Sarah, so your ex-boyfriend's little sister murdering your sister, yeah, that's gonna cause some tension. So yeah, and let's just kind of get this right out of the way right now. That I think that Thea turning out to be the killer was a brilliant choice on the part of the writers. Like a lot of people, I didn't really consider her much of a suspect because the way things have been presented to us so far, it seemed like she was down in South America when this happened. So them sort of pulling it kind of out of thin air that she was actually in Starling City seems to me to be a little bit of a cheat. There's also the bit where Felicity said that the arrows were thrown into Sarah. And then this episode, she does address that by saying, I didn't consider that someone as short as Thea could have been firing a bow and arrow, which does seem like kind of sloppy work on Felicity's part, just assuming that the killer was not a short person. But in all fairness, Felicity is not a CSI. She just happens to know a superhero who is also a CSI and whose help, for whatever reason, she did not bother to ask for. Ask Caitlin Snow for help, but not the actual trained and experienced crime scene investigator who really likes her. And yeah, it's like, hey Barry, could you check this for me to make sure I didn't make any mistakes? Sure, Felicity. Hey, did you? Okay, you get where I'm going, right? But sometimes yeah, there we go. That's better. But sometimes you just kind of have to go with things. And I didn't think for a second that Oliver had actually killed Sarah because, oddly enough, if I remember that episode correctly, he was actually off talking with Barry Allen when Sarah was killed. So when they say, well, okay, this matches a whole bunch of your DNA, well, then Thea becomes the obvious suspect because, well, that's the only other person who's still alive that Oliver shares DNA with. Now, the question, of course, becomes, well, is Thea going to find out that she killed Sarah? Answer, yes, of course she is, because that would be interesting. Laurel would flip the hell out. Oliver is going to have to protect Thea from Laurel. Roy is going to be like, oh, So I'm not the only person around here who's killed an innocent person while hepped up on drugs. And then, of course, there's the whole Thea thing of like, oh my god, my own father brainwashed, drugged me, and used me to murder someone. So, yeah, I don't think happy daddy-daughter time with Thea and Malcolm is going to last too awful much longer. But the fact that she did take out Sarah, give Thea credit for that. Of course, Sarah had absolutely no reason to think that Thea was any sort of a threat to her. So yeah, remember as we said when I did the episode review where Sarah died, even the most badass person out there can die if they get bushwhacked. And having somebody who you believe to be perfectly harmless and you care about sort of appear suddenly and start trying to kill you, yeah, that can easily take down someone seriously as badass as Sarah. This also goes, and also you got to give Thea credit. She stood up to the arrow. Now, granted, Oliver would not have gone after her, did not go after her terribly hard. He just sort of burst in through that window and yelled at her a little bit. I gotta admit, I was really hoping he would go full on like what he did with his mom and say, "Thea Queen, you have failed this city." But, that really wouldn't have made sense. But it sure as hell would have been cool. So we also get to see this episode, another confrontation between Oliver and Malcolm. And here we see that Malcolm has once again just played Oliver like a puppet. And he's like, yeah, I did all that. And guess what? There's nothing you can do about it without bringing the wrath of the League of Assassins down on your little sister. I mean, Oliver has totally been owned. And oh man, is John Barrowman awesome when he's being a smug asshole. I mean, it is a glorious thing to behold. But, John Barrowman is just an absolutely phenomenal actor. So, yeah, again, I really just cannot say enough things about how awesome it is that the show managed to get him to come on here and be basically at this point, I think we can safely call him Oliver's arch enemy. And from comments Barrowman himself has made about the role, it looks like Malcolm is probably going to be a reoccurring antagonist for Oliver for quite some time. I have a feeling that once again, by the end of the season, Malcolm Merlyn is going to weasel his way out of whatever bad stuff goes down and return to haunt Starling City once again because, well, every good hero needs an archenemy. And you could certainly do it a lot worse than having said archenemy played by somebody like John Barrowman. So let's see. Not a huge amount to say about what's going on with Dig this episode, although I did see a tweet from Stephen Amell during this show saying, like, yeah, Dig's laying down some hard truth here. Really like that moment with Oliver giving Roy a hug goodbye before he headed out. I kind of was half expecting him to say sort of like, if I don't come back, it's up to you to sort of take care of Starling. But I think that didn't really need to be said, and I don't think he would have wanted to make it look like he was handing Roy the mantle of leadership. If that happened, to anybody it would probably be Dig who would take over as leader. Felicity is not. She's not that kind of a person. Roy doesn't have the experience yet. And Laurel is emotionally messed up. Dig is the guy there in the Arrow Cave who is most often thinking clearly. He's the guy who I think is really best at compartmentalizing his emotions. So let's see. Who else do we have to talk about? Nothing particular to say about Quentin Lance. Just sort of feel bad for the guy. I mean, everybody around his family is lying to him, and they're saying that they're doing this to protect him. But exactly how long is Sarah going to be able to just fall off the earth before he starts to suspect that something terrible has happened to her? So yeah, when Quentin does find out the truth, and of course he will because that's interesting, I envision another trip to the ER for him. Moving on. Now, one of the other big questions that people are having is, hey, what's up with the Katana situation? I honestly did not see Maseo being alive coming at all. I'd heard some people saying that, oh, that was given away by one of the previews. I guess I missed that particular previews. When he took off that hood, I'm like, oh my god, Maseo is still alive? Simply because I knew that Katana was on the going to be on the show, I just sort of assumed that he was dead. Because in the comics, Tatsu, who's Katana, her husband Maseo, and her two children. She had two children in the comics. She only has the son here on the show. Had died before she became a superhero. Before that, she'd been just basically an ordinary Japanese housewife. Now here on the show, they're doing things a little bit differently. Both Maseo and Tatsu are presented as being serious badasses. We've seen Tatsu, mess up some triad thugs. Here she full-on battles China White. It doesn't look like she won that fight, but still, China White is nobody to mess with. And I do have to take a moment to give Kelly Hu some credit. Even though she did have only the one line in Japanese, she actually pronounced it reasonably well. Of course, having an actual Japanese person on the set with her at the time probably could have possibly been helpful. Who knows? Maybe she speaks Japanese. I don't know. So, some people have kind of been thinking that this is going to lead to Maseo being Katana and not Tatsu. I don't think that's what's going to happen. I think what we're going to ultimately find out is that something really bad happened in Hong Kong, and Maseo believed that Tatsu and his son died, and Tatsu believed that Maseo and her son died. I'm totally sure the kid is going to turn out to be dead. And even Maseo even basically kind of says that he ended up in Nanda Parbat because he had nothing. And Maseo also gives the translation of the Arabic name that Ra's al Ghul has given him, which was something like Phantom or Wraith. I don't remember exactly which one. Now, Maseo in the comics was, again, never anybody who had a code name or anything like that. He was really just sort of a dead person in a superhero's backstory. Although they have taken some time in more recent years to sort of flesh him out as a character in regards to when they're telling stories about Katana. She actually had her own series recently, but it only lasted about 12 issues. In all fairness, though, it wasn't a bad series. I've read the first collection. So I have a feeling that Maseo is... I have the feeling that Tatsu is actually, in the second half of the season, going to turn out to be alive, turn up in Starling City, and probably going to be gunning for China White, who I imagine they're probably looking to bring back here in the present day. And if China White is working with the League of Assassins, well, that would be really awesome because, Maseo would be horribly conflicted, and just the idea, husband versus wife. And of course, how is Maseo going to react if it turns out like Ra's al Ghul orders him, like, hey, go and work for the person that kidnapped your wife? And I had the feeling they're leading up to it, having her in some way be responsible for the death of Maseo's son. And, I guess I gotta say in general that I'm totally cool with China White coming back in the later half of the season in modern times and being a problem again. Again, I've said that I think the show is also very lucky to have Kelly Hu on there, and that China White is, a solid sort of character to be a reoccurring villain. So that would be really cool. And also, if Katana does come back and sides with Team Arrow, that would give them a really big asset in their conflict with Malcolm Merlyn and the League of Assassins. I mean, Laurel is obviously pretty soon going to step up and take on the mantle of the Canary fully. We've got Ted Grant in the background, and this episode we see Ray Palmer showing Felicity his Atom suit. Now, I don't think we're going to get to see him bust that out again until the latter half of the season. And there are also some hints that this suit is actually kind of possibly leading up to some of the stuff involving OMAC. I don't want to talk about that too awful much because basically I just don't want to confuse the hell out of people who don't read the comics. But do remember, we did see some of the blueprints for something called OMAC several episodes ago. So I think that might ultimately turn out to be a big part of things, because Olmec is super dangerous, and there's nothing the League of Assassins, and especially Ra's al Ghul, love more than a good doomsday weapon. But anyway, getting back to Ray Palmer, so here we see him kind of clear things up with Felicity, and we get a little bit more insight into Ray's backstory. And the main thrust of it is his fiance was killed during the rampage of Brother Blood's goons during the latter half of last season. Now, the fiance of a famous billionaire being murdered by some masked crazies, that seems like the sort of thing that would have made the papers quite extensively. But in all fairness, the mayor and the chief prosecutor of the city, as well as God only knows how many cops and ordinary people, were also murdered in that chaos. So I don't think Ray was making that up. I've seen a few people who say, I think Ray's making that up. Okay, you do realize that Felicity can totally find that out in about 2 seconds if she bothers to check. So I think if Ray was trying to lie to her, he would have come up with something more plausible and something that would stand up to a Google search. So I think Ray is being sincere here. And of course, there's the big moment in regards to Felicity. Oliver flat out tells her that he loves her. And oh God, was it wonderful just to watch the internet go crazy. Oh, fellow fans, I tell you, there are a few things I love more than watching you suffer and go crazy online, but in a good way. And what really gets me are the people who are like, "Oh God, the show is toying with my emotions again. I hate it. I'm never watching the show again." Like, yeah, you're going to be watching next episode. I like every single episode. I see somebody going online like, "Oh, that's it. I'm done with this show." No, you're not. No, you're not. And I just don't understand the mindset of people who think that if a show causes them to feel for feel for the characters or be upset about something that happens on the show, that this somehow is bad in some way. No, this is what drama is supposed to do. You're supposed to feel happy when the characters win. You're supposed to feel sad when bad things happen to them. You're supposed to just really have an emotional reaction to what is going on. So when I see people, it's like, "Oh God, stop playing with my heart, stop playing with my emotions, stop jerking me," like, you can't have everything wrapped up in a neat little package every single episode. I mean, granted, it's again just people sort of posting their knee-jerk emotional reactions to things. But if you've watched my reviews long enough, you know what I think of knee-jerk emotional reactions. Yeah, this is what I work with mostly when I'm talking about these shows. But anyway, I gotta say that really was a great scene, and just the look on Stephen Amell's face and the way he carried himself in that scene, that was gorgeous stuff. And that's just one more right in the heart, baby. Which is a great setup to Oliver getting one in the gut from Ra's al Ghul. Now, what people who don't read the comics might not realize is, him and Ra's having that. Yes, Ra's and Ra's are both acceptable pronunciations for the guy's name. And yes, I know they said it was specifically supposed to be Ra's on Batman Beyond, but technically, John Constantine's name is supposed to be John Constantine, but nobody here in America pronounces it that way, so just kind of get over it. Anyway, so the duel between Ra's and Oliver, with them both being shirtless and having that sword fight, this is reminiscent of a famous story from the Batman comics. If I remember correctly, it's actually the story that really first introduced Ra's to the DC universe. And it ends with him and Batman having this shirtless sword fight out in the middle of the desert. Batman kept his mask on, even though Ra's knew that he was Bruce Wayne, just because, he's Batman, that's how he rolls. with Nissa sort of serving as a bit of a stand-in for Talia al Ghul. Obviously, no romantic connection between her and Oliver, but still, they just sort of changed it to from the desert to some mountain, snowy place. Now, of course, the question is, are they? Well, obviously, Oliver isn't dead, and it was really hilarious to actually see some people online going like, "Is Oliver really dead?" Like, no, you damn idiots! Of course he's not dead. Not only is he literally the main character of the show, this is a comic book show. Again, I just can't believe that some people out there online actually thought that Oliver might be dead. I mean, this is like the inverse of the end of the first season of Game of Thrones, where there were people who were like, "Oh no, no, Ned Stark's totally going to turn out to be alive next episode." Yeah, shows what you know, suckers. I was so laughing my ass off when that happened. Oh, God. Oh, it's so fun to watch other fans suffer. It really, really is. Did you know that Schadenfreude is my favorite German word? Can you guess why? Yeah, I'm that kind of a guy. But anyway, the question people are asking now is, well, is Oliver going to come back via a Lazarus pit? And, well, remember, Roz says that he hasn't fought a duel with anybody like this in 67 years. So 1947. So this again is there to heavily imply that Raj's centuries of life from the comics are canon. And it might even be a backdoor way to introduce some of the World War II era heroes into the Arrowverse. But that's probably a little bit of long odds. But remember what they also say about where this has happened. It's a place that's considered sacred by the League of Assassins. So I'm kind of wondering if Raish wasn't sort of hedging his bets. I mean, like, yeah, he's kind of like, yeah, there's Oliver Queen has almost no chance whatsoever of killing me, but just on the off chance that he gets lucky, hey, why don't I have this fight right by the Lazarus pit, just in the teeny tiny case that something happens and I end up losing, which would totally be the sort of thing that Ra's al Ghul would do. So yeah, I think it might be possible that somebody tosses Oliver into a Lazarus pit. Just because Mark Guggenheim has said that he's sort of more open to superpowers showing up on Arrow. And I have to imagine that something as fantastic as the Lazarus Pit, while not a superpower, is enough of a crazy comic book sort of element that he might be a little bit reluctant to include it until more recently, when fans have shown that they really do respond well to superpowers in the Arrow Flash universe. There's also the possibility that Ra's just wasn't as thorough as he should have been, and that Oliver survived, and that he'll be nursed back to health. But I don't know. Ra's seems like a pretty thorough guy. So of course the question is, well, if you did see the preview, you do see somebody coming across Oliver's body there at the bottom of the mountain. My number one guess is that it would be Maceo. Like, Maceo, it really doesn't seem like when it comes to Oliver, that he's 100% down with the League, what's going on with the League of Assassins. And, him sort of slowly starting to turn against the League a little bit, that would, I think, be a great way to sort of steer his character in a more heroic direction, and him, again, sort of maybe possibly break with the League and side with Oliver in the latter half of the season. But again, that's just me spitballing. And with that, guys, I think I've said everything that I had to say about this episode. It was a doozy. I had a lot of fun, and I cannot tell you how excited I am about the second half of this season. Stephen Amell and all the other people on the show have been saying, if you thought this show was crazy before, wait until you see what we do with Season 3. And so far, they have lived up to it. There is really not a huge amount of bad things that I can say about Season 3. Arrow is a show that has consistently improved and improved and improved. And yeah, there are sometimes problems, there are sometimes missteps, but that's just nature of the beast. Nothing's perfect. But that does not change the fact that this is still my absolute favorite hour of television every week, with Flash being number 2. And guys, man, I'm just loving it. I just got to say that again. So I'm going to wrap it here. As always, please comment, rate, and subscribe. And of course, you can follow me on Twitter at Hoosier Jedi. Until next time, take care and have a good one.